So I have something of a thought. Know who you are. You know, we always say, yeah, don't be a stranger to yourself, you know, because if you know who you are, then you can have access to joy, and then you'll be swimming in joy like a fish in the ocean. But certainly it's true that, you know, all of us could be happier than we are, but here's the truth. You couldn't be better than you are. You couldn't be one bit better. And so we kind of buy into this odd goofball narrative, you know, like we were thrown out of the Garden of Eden because we were bad, and we're trying to get back in, so we're trying to be good. It doesn't make any damn sense. It's a goofball. Who you are is perfectly right. If you know who you are and you're not a stranger to yourself, then you have access to joy. And so we tend to try to want to fix people because we're convinced that God wants me fixed. Where did we get that? So this comes to mind because of, I went to the hospital last week and I visited a friend of mine named Robert, who years and years ago, homie who was part of our graffiti removal team. And on Christmas Day, this past Christmas Day, he was beaten so badly that he was left in a coma. It was at St. Francis Hospital. And I went to see him many times and was in a coma. He was in a coma for a long time. And then when he came out of the coma, he was just couldn't communicate. And so I saw him last week, and he can speak now, but you know, he doesn't know who I am. And it's kind of heartbreaking because I've known him for 25 years. I wrote about him in one of my books, and oddly, it was about a Christmas Day, and I know that he didn't have family. Family had sort of, you know, kind of threw him to the curb, frankly. And so on Christmas Day, I said, "What'd you do on Christmas Day?" "Oh, I was just here in my apartment." And I said, "You know, by yourself?" He said, "No, I invited 6 homies from the graffiti removal crew. You know, guys like me who didn't have no place to go." And he names the 6, and I thought, wow, enemies, rivals. That's amazing. "Well, what'd you do?" He goes, "Well, you're not going to believe it. I cooked a turkey." And I said, "Really? De veras? Wow. How'd you prepare it?" He goes, "Well, you know, ghetto style." And I told him I wasn't familiar with that recipe. And so he said, "Well, you rub it with a gang of butter and you put salt and pepper, you squeeze 2 limones on it. It tasted proper." I said, "Wow, I'm impressed. What else did you have besides turkey?" "No, that's just it, just turkey." 7 of us, we sat in the kitchen, we pulled our chairs up, we just stared at the oven waiting for the turkey to be done. Did I mention it tasted proper? Well, sometime later, I always just found him kind of remarkable because he carried so much in terms of abuse and abandonment and neglect and hard, terrible things. And yet, he was swimming in joy. He was a fish in the ocean. And I said, "How'd you pull that off?" And he thought about it for a long time. We were sitting in my office, and he says, "Well, I always suspected there was something of goodness in here, but I couldn't find it. Until one day I did. I found it, right here. Goodness." And his eyes fill up with tears, and he says, "Ever since that day, I've always known who I was. Now nothing can touch me. Even being beaten nearly to death in a coma, and you no longer know who your people are. He still knows the truth of who he is, even in that condition. Kind, gentle, swimming in joy, like a fish in the ocean." Don't be a stranger. Know who you are. And sure, a lot of us could be happier, but you couldn't be one bit better.